As a burgeoning energy crisis looms, raising huge concern among European Union leaders, a confidential paper obtained by news agency Reuters has revealed that by 2030, the European Union could find itself as dependent on China for lithium-ion batteries and fuel cells as it once was on Russia for energy. The EU has been grappling with the spectre of foreign dependency, and this time it's not about energy imports, but about essential components for green energy and technology. The paper, prepared for EU leaders and set to be discussed in Spain on the 5th of October, has set alarm bells ringing. The paper says, and I quote, without implementing strong measures, the European energy ecosystem could have a dependency on China by 2030 of a different nature, but with a similar severity from the one it had on Russia before the invasion of Ukraine. According to the European Commission, in 2021, the year before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the EU took more than 40% of its total gas consumption, 27% of oil imports and 46% of coal imports from Russia. Europe's ambitious goal of achieving net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 hinges on green energy sources like wind and solar power. However, these sources are intermittent, and to bridge the gaps, Europe needs energy storage solutions. While emphasizing the urgency of finding sustainable sources for these crucial components, the paper states this will skyrocket our demand for lithium-ion batteries, fuel cells and electrolyzers, which is expected to multiply between 10 and 30 times in the coming years. But it's not just green energy where the European Union faces potential vulnerabilities. This paper highlights concerns in the digital tech space as well. For the demand for digital devices surges, as the demand surges, Europe's reliance on foreign sources for vital tech components becomes apparent. The document says forecasts suggest that the demand for digital devices such as sensors, drones, data servers, storage equipment and data transmission networks will rise sharply in this decade. EU leaders are now confronted with a pressing issue: how to reduce their dependency on China and diversify their sources, potentially turning towards Africa and Latin America. The consequences of inaction could be dire. This concern essentially stems from worries about China's growing global assertiveness and economic weight. The paper goes on to say by 2030, this foreign dependency could seriously hinder the productivity gains that the European industry and service sector urgently require, and could impede the modernization of agricultural systems essential to addressing climate change. As Europe grapples with the risk of over-reliance on China for essential green energy and tech components, the stakes are pretty high. EU leaders are set to deliberate on strategies to mitigate these risks and ensure a secure, sustainable and resilient future. The European Commission has been trotting out what it calls a de-risking strategy, ostensibly in pursuit of developing a resilient economy for the 27-member bloc that would be less reliant on China when it comes to critical technology. But will those measures be enough? In response, China's Premier Li Qiang has warned countries against attempts to politicize their economies. Speaking at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting of the new champions in China, Li said the invisible barriers put up by some people in recent years are becoming widespread and pushing the world into fragmentation and even confrontation. We should oppose the politicization of economic issues and work together to keep global industrial and supply chains stable, smooth and secure. Okay, let's go back to Shri for more on this. Shri, of course, every time China feels its interests are under threat, it starts lecturing the world. And it seems to be doing that in this case as well, calling it politicization of the economies. But China's protestations apart, put this issue into perspective for us. At a time when European Union keeps talking about pursuing a de-risking strategy, which is a euphemism really for reducing its reliance on countries like China, it seems like it's actually moving in the opposite direction if the contents of this report are to be believed.
Right. So Neha, first of all, I don't really understand what the report means by saying that we will become dependent on China by 2013.
They already are.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. 6 out of top 10 battery manufacturers around the world are from China. China has capacity of 890 gigawatt hours of EV production, which is almost 80% of world production. Between US and Europe, they have only 20% of the production capacity. And this scenario is not going to change until 2030 because China is also investing in increasing its capacity. So this is, EV is one area, Neha, where China, we have to give them credit. We have to give China credit. They got their act, bang on. They were 10 to 15 years, ahead of all other countries in identifying EV as an important emerging industry. And then, they were also blessed with the supply of the rare earth materials that is required to create these batteries that go into these batteries. And the other thing they did was also to capture mining capacity in other parts of the world, rare earth capacity in other parts of the world. So there is some credit that we have to give to China as far as getting its EV, strategy in place. So now Europe has woken up to the fact, and US has also woken up to the fact that, oh, we need to go green, but all the batteries that we need in our cars, that will be green cars, are going to come from China. So if Europe and US are to replace the current production from China, Neha, they have to invest almost $200 billion. Now, even if you make the investment, these are not capacities that can be created overnight. So, as far as 2030, I don't think the world has any option but to rely on China for battery capacity. Neha, that's very, very clear. I think there is some lesson for India also. And I think right now we account for about just 0.2% of global EV battery capacity. India needs to start looking at its own, EV future and see how much of our green commitment is going to come from these EV cars. That is why I think in the interim, if you look at what happened at G20, we did not set any kind of goals on fossil fuel reduction on green gas emission. So China has completely overwhelmed the EV industry, and it's going to be very hard for Europe and US to displace it at least till 2030, Neha. That's very, very clear.
All right. Shri, anyone watching Global Lens tonight would think we are obsessed with China.